YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Another quick game of Interplanetary I Spy here for all you space geeks out there. Now, this is a set of images that was taken quite a long time ago. In fact, back in 2012-13, I think, from Sol 186, Mars Science Laboratory. Now, we got a lovely Gigapan here by the master of the Gigapans, Neville Thompson. And what we're looking at today is a crash site. Now, this, to me, looks very much like a crashed aircraft or missile or something very similar. Possibly even a boat, but you can actually see, without doing anything to this, without even zooming in, you can see a nose part here, another part here, another part here, another part here, and it all goes right along further off to the left of this Gigapan. But this Gigapan stops here. There are other images that show more of it going right along in a long row of parts, okay? Actually, I'll just refresh you on this video. Now, this video was one that I mentioned in the previous video. It was called Mars Alien Gun Camera and UFO Wreckage, Curiosity Artifacts, September 2014. So this is quite an old video, but it does show some very good detail on these artifacts that we're going to be looking at today, okay? And we've got all sorts of crazy things like this with teeth, this object with teeth in it, and this is part of the wreckage we're going to be looking at today, which is this thing, which looks a bit like a gun camera or some kind of mechanical object which has bolts on it. And I spent ages enhancing this back then, very carefully, and I picked out all the bolts. So there is detail to be had in these images if you know how to enhance them. You're just going to be careful and sharpen them up very carefully, like I've done here. So this is definitely not a rock. You can see that thing I just showed you here, but you can't see the bolts very well. You can see one there, and one here, and one here. They are there, but they're not very clear in this. You've really got to enlarge the hell out of this. Take a clip, enlarge it, and play around with it, sharpen it up and stuff to get the details out. But if you look at the overall area, it's absolutely covered in wreckage. Here, we have a bent prop here, just here, with blades, it looks like. On the front nose part, I call this the nose cone, we have like a ball-shaped thing here with parts coming off of it, joined to this, and we have all these sections. Now this, I think, is probably either a camera on the front or a guidance, part of the guidance system, like you would get on a missile or something, a guided missile. But having looked at this again today and not looked at this properly for a number of years, I realised that some of this stuff in here may actually be the pilot. Just here we have this, what looks like a hand hanging down here, like a bone, like a bony arm and a thumb. Now this may not be, of course, this may be pieces of wire and cable, but there does seem to be what looks a bit like a person here, or the remains, the mummified remains of a pilot. There's also a skull here, or something that looks like a skull, may not be, of course, just here. Here's that thing with the teeth on it. So I'm going to show some of these things up close. I've taken some clips, and what I'll do is I'll play with the contrast a bit, see if I can get some more detail out of this. Now, I'm also going to show you, actually before we go any further, some examples of wreckage that I've just got from Google Images here. Now, there was a really interesting post actually that came up on Twitter last night. I was looking at Twitter, and Jimmy Church posted this. Now, Jimmy Church is a very well-known personality in the USA. A lot of you may have heard of him. He's also known as Dark Journalist on YouTube. He's got a great channel. I watch his videos all the time. He does some very in-depth research into stuff like UFOs and secret societies and JFK, that kind of thing. He's what I would call an expert, a real expert. And he's along the sort of lines of someone like Mike Barra or other researchers, you know, like and people from Ancient Aliens, that kind of stuff. But he's got a lot of kudos, this guy, and he posted this really cool image here. Now this is from Roswell, the Roswell crash. This is actually a photograph of the Roswell wreckage. Now, does that look like a UFO to you? Doesn't look like one to me. It also doesn't look like a weather balloon either. Nothing to do with either. I would say, in fact, that this is possibly a jet aircraft that crashed, a secret test craft perhaps, similar to the Horton Flying Wing. Basically, at the end of World War II, in 1945, lots of Nazi scientists were taken to the US, thousands in fact. A lot of them ended up working for NASA. A lot of Nazis ended up working and forming the CIA, helping to form the CIA. Incidentally, the CIA was formed just after Roswell, I think, or just before it. It was around the same time, in '47, and were specifically put together to counter the UFO threat at the time. Now, a lot of the UFOs that were seen in the area were probably test aircraft. I'm not saying they all were. I'm saying that a lot of them probably were, and this is an example of it. Now, pay attention very carefully to this thing. I'll come back to this later. This thing right in the middle. We've got the aeroplane at the back. We've got the wings here with the engines. There's a crumpled engine there. These are engine parts and parts of the manifold and fuselage here that are all kind of broken up. And we've got these parts down here at the bottom. But pay attention and remember this structure here, right in the center. Okay, we've got this kind of bent up piece of material here, and metal, was probably aluminium or something, with little rivets in it and stuff. I'll show you a close up of that very quickly. Right. Now, this is very relevant. Why? Because it's almost identical to some of the records I'm about to show you. Okay, here we go. Now look at this. Look at that shape there. And look at these other shapes. Okay, now, in another video I did back in 2013, 14, now this is Sol 198. Now this is very close to the wreckage we're looking at today. I found this object, and this is called Mirage UFO or Aircraft Escape Capsule. Now what I think this is part of the same wreckage, the main wreckage I'm showing you here, which is in Sol 186. Now this is the main part of the wreckage, missile or plane or whatever it is, here. This is the main part. Now, Sol 198 was obviously taken 12 days later, but not very far from here. In fact, it's over this side. And as the rover went along, it looked over here, and there was more wreckage to see in the images, and that's what this is. Sol 198, okay, and I'm just going to show you very quickly what that is, just here, and this is part of the same wreckage. Now, I called it escape capsule. I don't know if it is. It probably isn't. But also, pay attention to the thing next to it, just here. So I'll show you more. I'll put clips of these things in at the end of the video, like I always do. There'll be clips of everything. But pay attention to this thing here. 1, 2, 3, 4, there's kind of parts to it. It's kind of sticking off the ground. You can see under it. And you've got these parts, okay? Now, unfortunately, that's right on the edge of Sol 198, and we never see the whole thing, apart from in one of the other lower res images, but it's there. And it's very similar to that thing I just showed you, which is the picture that Jimmy Church shared on Twitter last night. Just here. Almost identical. Now, does that mean this is alien? No. Does it mean the wreckage on Mars is from Earth? No. But what it does suggest is that we're looking at aircraft wreckage in both cases. It doesn't mean they're built by the same people. I'm not suggesting that. I'm not suggesting that this was magically flown or dropped on Mars, because the wreckage we're looking at on Mars is much older than this, I would say. And this is 1940s, this is late 1940s. I would say the wreckage on Mars is probably older than that. I would say it's probably double that age, but it's hard to say because the conditions on Mars will, like I've said 1,000 times before, preserve things on the surface for probably thousands and thousands of years without them really degrading much. And when you have metal objects as well, they're not really going to wind erode very quickly, and there's hardly any moisture to rust this stuff. And of course, if a lot of this stuff is aluminium or something similar, some other kind of metal alloy, then it may not rust at all. So some of this wreckage we're looking at on Mars may actually be very old indeed, but is in very good shape, considering. So we've got these sections here. We've got this part here, the nose part. We've got this part here, which what looks a bit like it's got someone mummified into it. That could be the cockpit area, all smashed up. Now, bear in mind, this is a lake bed, so this has all been covered in mud in the bottom of the lake, and the lake's dried out, okay? So this is in mud encrusted wreckage. So you're not gonna see that much shiny metal parts here because it's all covered in clay and sediment. I mean, but some of it is shiny. And we got part of the body here, look. So a cylindrical shaped aircraft, I would say, coming right along here. And we've even got what looks a bit like parts of it with wires and things hanging down and sticking out of it. It's very, very complex and interesting wreckage here. And this thing here with the teeth in it is pretty conclusive, I would say. So these things have all been published before. I published this a long time ago, as I showed you. And it's kind of been forgotten about, really, this thing. And I still think this is one of the best finds. And I think I was the first person to realise or publish this as an actual crashed aircraft or wreckage find. Other people may have spotted it and said stuff about it, but most people were concerned with this thing, which looks a bit like a robot leg, but this is probably part of the wreckage. I would say this is either part of the guidance system or part of the, it might be a gun camera, it might be part of the navigation system, who knows. There's no way to tell what this actually is exactly, but what I can tell you is it's not a rock, and it's made of metal, and it's manufactured because it has bolts in it, as I showed in this video, which is this one. There's no possible way that this is a rock, okay? It's metallic, it's manufactured, and it has bolts. Now, a highly advanced culture wouldn't probably use bolts, right? So I'm suggesting that the level of technology that was on Mars before the cataclysm, or during the cataclysm, or when it potentially ended, was similar to the level of technology we have today, or perhaps in the 40s, 50s and 60s. Jet technology, they may have had very advanced stuff, but of course if you look at modern technology, most of the really high-tech modern technology is only in the hands of the military and not in the hands of the public. Public don't necessarily have this stuff. We may have mobile phones and cameras and that kind of thing, and flat screen TVs, but that's about as far as it goes, really. And computers, of course. The military are always years and years ahead of what the actual public are allowed to have. And it may be the case that when this area was hit by a cataclysm, that the civilization on Mars was only as advanced as we were in the 1940s or 50s. Okay, and do check out my playlists and look up on my channel a video called Mars 1941, Mars Explosion 1941. That explains a lot of this stuff and how old I think a lot of this stuff is. Okay, so I'll put a link to that at the end of this video as well, on the card links at the end, so you can check that out. Let's look at these images up close. Look at this carefully. Zoom in. We've got this round object here, a bit like that thing I just showed you. Now this is either part of it's either a camera or part of the guidance system or something. Now this was probably mounted on the front and has come off. Probably a camera on a gimbal. So it's got this kind of round bracket attached to it. So that was probably bolted inside and would look left and right and up and down to guide this thing here to its target, okay? Now I'm not sure what sort of missile this is. It's probably part of a Scud or something similar, I would say, in the Middle East. But look at the wreckage. Look at this wreckage, it's all twisted up. And you've got a cylindrical part to it here, of course. Loads of bits of wire and metal twisted up and broken. Okay, got the sort of interesting details there. Right, I'll put clips of these in the end anyway, but pay attention to this. Obviously a propeller found in the desert from a wrecked aeroplane, all bent up like it would be. As it came in, it would have hit the ground and bent the ends of the props around like that, you see. Now, there's something right next to this thing on Mars. Now, here's the wreckage, and next to it here, we have what looks like a propeller, just here. There's the middle of the propeller. There's one blade. There's another blade. Blade twisted round, and another one coming up like that. Okay, there it is. Just there. We have the end section, what I call the nose, here. And we have it joined to this thing that comes back like that. This is the nose section. Now this may have been on a gimbal as well, or there may have been a camera attached to this or something, or if it was guided, infrared maybe, or if there was a pilot in it, which it looks like there might have been, there may have been a gun or weapon attached to this on a gimbal, like a laser or a cannon or a machine gun, which could have then fired in multiple directions by twisting around like on a gimbal. Okay, you can see the clear section. So you've got a circular part here. You've got this. Oh, sorry, let's do that again. And that's kind of joined to that, which comes back like this, and this kind of comes like that. This is technical stuff. These aren't rocks. This is what I would call a technofossil, or a bunch of technofossils from a wreck. There's a hole there. And we got here what looks like an arm with fingers, like a hand or something. It may not be, this may be wire, these may be wires hanging down. But this to me looks, actually now looking at it again, this here looks like a pilot, just here. Very strange, mummified looking person. Now that may not be the case, of course, I admit that. But if you look at this looks like an arm coming down here, and a thumb there, and fingers, like that. All right? So that may not be the case, of course. I may be seeing it wrong, but who knows? There are lots of similar things in the area. And we also have that thing with the teeth on there, just here, with the three teeth, 1, 2, 3. It looks metallic. Part of the fuselage here. Now this is a tube section, but it's been ripped to pieces, split open. So it's kind of all kind of jagged and stuff, but the internal part you can see here, it's curved. It's got a nice curve to it. Here's an old Spitfire that's been dragged out of a lake or river or off a beach, I'm not sure which. It's not a very good quality photograph, but look at the colour, look at the complex, muddy, crappy sort of colour of it. Okay, and you've got all these shapes and bits of wire and parts of the superstructure and stuff showing through, and props all kind of bent and broken. Okay, it's not a great quality photograph but that was cool anyway. So I'm going to sharpen this up and see what we can find. Look at these details here. This isn't rock, this is metallic. What we've got to do is sharpen it and it all comes to life. Let's make this a bit smaller. Look at this stuff. Now this is some kind of gimbal here, which means that this is either part of the guidance system, or, like I said, it's like possibly a camera, or a mounted gun would have been on there, like you would get on the front of a helicopter, perhaps, like an Apache. This is mud encrusted wreckage. Sharpen this up. This hand was interesting to me. That looks like a hand, doesn't mean it is. It could be wire, like I said. And these could be legs here. This could be a head, just here. although it looks very strange, but there does seem to be a nose there. Just there. See that thing there? Where my, just there is what looks like an eye and a nose and a mouth, chin coming round here. But it's all twisted up, and the detail is a little confusing to look at. You've really got to look at this for a while and take your time with it. And just look at it carefully and take your time and just think about it slowly and not in a hysterical manner like some people in the mainstream seem to do with everything, especially when it comes to Mars. This wreckage here was interesting here, another metallic part here. And there's those teeth. It's there. All you got to do is sharpen it and out they come. It will get a bit distorted if you over sharpen it. But look at these details. Just because it's the same colour as everything else doesn't mean it is the same as everything else. This is why NASA use the orange filter. It makes everything blend together and look the same. So it's very hard to spot this stuff. Look at this stuff. This is technical wreckage here. And there's some other things over here. There's that. Let's sharpen up this prop here. There he is. It's not until you actually enhance some of these things that they come to life. There you are. Now you can see that that's more like a propeller. But until you sharpen it, it looks pretty much like a pile of rocks. But it isn't. There we are. Look at these details in here. This complex, mud-encrusted wreckage, like I said, in the bottom of a lake that is now dried out, a salt lake. Now, as I said in my previous videos about Lake Natron, if a helicopter pilot actually crashed into Lake Natron in Africa, which is the deadly salt lake there, and got mummified almost instantly because of the minerals and bicarbonate minerals and stuff like that in the lake. He was instantly mummified. So are we looking at a mummified pilot here in part of remains of either a helicopter or an aeroplane or whatever it is? A mummified pilot. Is this mummified remains we're looking at here as well? Mixed in with all this wreckage? Could be. I'd imagine the body would possibly come back this way. You'd assume that a pilot would be sitting, but they may not have done. So I'll see if I can drag more detail out of that in a minute anyway. So I'll put all these clips in at the end. I think the video's gone on long enough now. That is crazy. When you sharpen it, it's absolutely insane what you can see in here. Oh my God. Look at that. Is that a hand? It looks like a hand. One thumb, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, maybe. Sharpen that a bit more. So the key to these images is really to enlarge them, increase the pixel density, play with the brightness, and then sharpen it like this by hand. This is what I do. I don't sharpen the whole image, I just sharpen the bits I'm looking at. And then think, wow, okay, that is definitely something. And then, doesn't that look like a skull or a bit of wreckage there? A lot of this stuff looks very metallic, whereas a rock like that doesn't go really shiny unless you go crazy with it. This stuff goes shiny straight away. You just click on it once with the sharpen tool and it instantly becomes metallic looking. A wrecked aircraft with a pilot, with a nose section, with a middle section here, and I think there's a tail section further over to the left. There may be other wing parts. This is probably part of it as well here, perhaps. Metallic parts have got a different luminosity, and as soon as you sharpen it, they go very bright straight away. Whereas something like this bit of rock over here doesn't. See, look? It stays dull unless you sharpen the bejesus out of it like that, okay? About 10 times. So that's how you tell the difference between the different materials on the ground. That's how I do it. It's all to do with the luminosity and reflectivity of the substance it's made of. If it's hard and metallic, it will jump out at you like that as soon as you sharpen it. And you really only have to click on it once with the sharpen tool and it will jump straight out at you as something shiny like we have here. Do check me out on Twitter If you're on Twitter, just look up ArtAlienTV and there I am. Thanks for watching. See you soon.